often tell my sons the importance of education, the importance of getting a true education, the importance of learning. My oldest son often tells me, Dad, I want to have a mansion. I want to buy a Ferrari. I want to have a Lamborghini one day. Cool dreams that I hope that he inspires and be able to achieve, and that one day he can acquire these things that he's asking for, that he dreams about. I hope that one day I'm able to assist in some small way to help him attain these dreams, attain these things that he wants, that he desires, that his heart inspires for. I often tell my son, in order to get these things, you must have an education. You must be able to learn. But why? Why, Dad? Why must I have an education to obtain a mansion, a Ferrari, a Lamborghini? Well, when you go buy a Ferrari, Lamborghini, you got to make sure that they're not overcharging you. Make sure you're able to count your money. Make sure you're getting the correct price. Make sure all the correct features are in that said car. When you're buying a mansion, son, when you buy a home, they give you contracts, son, you need to make sure you understand the lingo. The language is in the contract. Make sure that you're not getting overcharged. You're not getting manipulated or taken to the cleaners, as we like to say. The importance of education, son, because at some point in your life, you're going to have to sign contracts. You have to understand what's in those said contracts. What's the language? Where are they speaking? Where are they asking for? What are they taking from you? What are you getting? But you know how I sound when I'm talking to my son? I sound like the teacher off the old Peanuts. You know Peanuts, Charlie Brown? The old Peanuts cartoon? When the teacher be like, blah, 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 blah. That's how I sound to my son when I'm telling him the importance of education. My youngest son, he's really big in NBA. Everything about him is NBA. You know, everything about old, new players, big into NBA. He says, Dad, I want to be an NBA player one day. I tell him the importance of having an education. Same answer. Why, Dad, do I need to have an education? Son, because one day you're going to have to sign an NBA contract. You need to make sure that they're going to pay you the right amount of money. You're getting the right amount of money for your services. You need to make sure your contract is correct, that they're not taking advantage of you. That you're not being manipulated. You know how I sound to my youngest son? It's like the Charlie Brown commercial. Blah, 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 blah. Because that's how it sounds, people, when we're talking to our children. Don't you sound like that when you're talking to your children? When you're talking to anybody about education, the importance of having education? Don't I sound like that sometimes when I talk to you? Don't I sound like I'm just saying blah, 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 blah? What does this have to do with today's show? What does the importance of education have to do with today's show? Well, people, because we're dealing with COVID-19, we're dealing with a pandemic, we got a lot of things going on in our world. And we need to be informed and educated about what's happening, but what's also being done and what affects our lives. But I think I need to get to the point of what today's show about, because I can see right now the confusion in your eyes. And you're like, get to the point. So we got to take a trip, people. We got to take a trip on the Magic School Bus. Once again, old reference to an old cartoon. We got to take a trip back to 1932, Megansville, Alabama. We got to go to the Tuskegee Institution, founded by Booker T. Washington. An institution created to help free African-American slaves get educated on sharecropping, being able to manage their own land. Give them a trade. We often call that vocational schools now. You have vocational schools where you go, you get a typical education along with a trade. This was Tuskegee Institution. Funded by the federal government, this institution became ahead of its time, having a huge science department, amongst other things, agricultural department. This school had become a big epidemic center for black sharecroppers who wanted to learn. Founded by Booker T. Washington, the first teacher, first principal of the Tuskegee Institution, this was important. But this is also important to what happened next in 1932. Of course, the school was founded in 1881. It wasn't founded in 1932, 1881, just be corrected. 1932, we had an issue in Alabama. Due to promiscuous sexual lives of people, there was a disease flying around. You ever heard of bad blood? Nah. Some of you probably like, what the heck is bad blood? I never heard of bad blood. What do you mean your blood's contaminated? No, that's not bad blood. Bad blood was a reference for a disease called syphilis. Syphilis was commonly called bad blood. It was running rampant. Sort of like COVID-19 is running rampant through our community right now. Syphilis wasn't truly understood and was felt like COVID-19 that can be spread very easily. Spread it very easily. There was no cure for syphilis. There was no true scientific understanding of syphilis and how it was spread. Only known that it was done mostly through sexual contact. To get more information, the United States public health system decided to throw a program out here, to put a program out here to get a way to cure syphilis, to get better understanding of syphilis. So how did they do that? We take advantage of the most vulnerable people. Who are the most vulnerable people? The most vulnerable people often are people who are the most uneducated. We go back to education, the importance of education. People, it's important that we understand. We'll go deeper in that in a second. African American community, sharecroppers, were often uneducated, not very intelligent at this time. But who's to blame them? Like I said, during slavery, education was outlawed. African Americans were not allowed to be educated, were not allowed to learn how to read or write. It was the law that we were not allowed to do that. We were not allowed to be formally educated. A lot of these African Americans in this rural community of Alabama, all they did was sharecropping. They worked a farm. They didn't really take much reading and writing to do work a farm. But they were all fearful of this disease called bad blood, aka syphilis. Without proper health care, which another thing that we can all agree with, because even now, 21st century people, we talk about 1932 compared to 2020, where we still don't have proper health system, but we'll get to that in a second. In 1932, these members of this rural community of Alabama, they weren't privileged to have proper health care, adequate health care centers. So the public health center, United States public health system, opened up clinics to help fight back against the disease called bad blood, or should we say syphilis to be more clear. A lot of these people, farmers, who are fearful of this disease, fearful of catching this deadly disease that attacks your lungs, that attacks your bodily organs, cause you to go blind, and sometimes crazy. Fearful of catching disease, similar to you, fearful of catching COVID-19 today, took advantage of this program. Mostly black males took advantage of this program. This opportunity to get free health care, flocking to clinics, often through churches, community leaders through churches and African American community leaders, urging them to take advantage of this new free program. Interestingly enough, these churches, these African American leaders in the community, knew about the true intentions of the Tuskegee Institution program that was distributed out there, and their true intentions of not curing syphilis, but just investigating how it affected the black community and the black man, and how it affected our nervous system. How were we able to adapt to it? Were we immune to it? These churches and these community leaders knew exactly what was the intentions of this experiment, but still, and a lot of times convinced, motivated, and inspired these uneducated black sharecroppers to still sign up for this horrific program. To be more precise, over 699 people, black men, signed up for this program. Want to get more interested in the numbers? A little over 200 of those people didn't even have syphilis, but were treated for it. How were they treated for this syphilis? Because there was no cure at the time. During 1932, there was no cure for syphilis at this time. There will be no cure until much later, decades later. There was no cure. But you were promised free health care. So what they were given was spinal taps. You know what spinal tap is, people? A lot of our women know what spinal tap is, especially if you had a child. You know what spinal tap is because they stick a needle into your back, into your spinal cord. Now here's an interesting thing about a spinal tap, and real quick education, real quick on this. If you move the wrong way, or you actually move from what I know, you can go paralyzed. So this is a very dangerous and a very painful thing. It's not just getting a needle in the arm drawing blood. This is very painful and very dangerous because if you move during this spinal tap, you can get paralyzed, and it's a very painful inserting a needle into your spinal cord. And the interesting thing about this was that these participants going through such a painful spinal tap or this painful, not operation, but I don't know that word to use right now, but basically them going through it had no significance to fighting syphilis. It would not have no significance to fighting syphilis. So there was no point in it. They were often given mercury, aspirin, few minerals and vitamins to help fight off. This is their way. This is what they were given to fight off this disease, fight off the sickness that they want. Now, unless they had a headache, aspirin wasn't going to do anything to fight syphilis. But once again, we're talking about uneducated black people who were sharecroppers at the time, signing up for a program that they had no idea they were just becoming guinea pigs. They didn't know how to read. They didn't know how to write. They didn't understand what they were signing up for. They listened to their community leaders, church leaders. They had no formal education. So according to them, hey, the federal government's giving us free health care. Why not take advantage of it? We need it. Let's get it. Not knowing they were guinea pigs. They were lab rats. And I'm sorry that I'm speaking that way and using terminology. I'm not calling the participants rats, but I'm using the terminology of how they were treated, how they were seen when they were put in these programs and ran tests on, given a disease sometimes, all in the name of science. I'm going to be clear, people, on what I'm saying here. These people spent over 40 years in this program. I want you to remember her name, Eunice Rivers. Eunice Rivers was a nurse, head nurse of the program. Was very important in this program. Very important in not the success of the program, but the longevity of the program. Why was Eunice Rivers, a black nurse, so important, so significant to this? Well, because Eunice Rivers kept the program going. She also kept the black sharecroppers who became suspicious about this program at bay. Constantly remind them the importance of this program. Though you're getting this painful spinal tap, it's very important and it's necessary that you get it. Though you don't feel like these minerals, these aspirin and mercury that we're giving you are making you feel any better, it's important to continue on receiving these treatments. Eunice Rivers was important because the government also opened up other clinics around Alabama that gave true free health care, not with the operation of trying to cure syphilis, but help with other things, the common cold, other problems that you may have, health problems you may have. Well, if you were a participant of the Tuskegee Institution, of the Tuskegee Experiment, you were not allowed to go to these other clinics. And when several men did try to get help or get assistance from these other clinics, try to take advantage of these free services, Eunice Rivers quickly, after finding out these men had registered to receive the help from these doctors, receive care from these doctors, Eunice Rivers quickly intervened. Remind the doctor that if you actually care or you take care of these patients, if you service these patients, that you will not only interrupt this experiment against syphilis, that you will not only disturb this experiment, but you will also contaminate this experience. So we need you not to service these men. Then what Eunice Rivers did was she distributed a list of all the participants of the Tuskegee Experiment to all area hospitals, all area doctors, instructing them to not give services, to not attempt to cure the effects of syphilis in these members. So if you were a participant of the Tuskegee Experiment, you were at the mercy of not only Eunice Rivers, but these doctors who are using you to experiment to understand the effects of the syphilis or bad blood disease. I don't think I'm hitting you hard enough. Remember what happened during the 1930s? Remember what was going on? Probably not. Not a historian, you don't understand. I told you, it's 1 of 4 decades, people. So we got to think about it. World War II had happened. You had the Korean War. Had the Vietnam War. Those 3 wars that happened in this time period, okay? Understand something, people. During World War II, Vietnam War, what was happening? People were being drafted into the Army. What's the significance to the story is? Due to enrollment in the Tuskegee Experiment, you were not allowed to be drafted in the Army. A list was sent to the Army that you were not allowed to be drafted because you were part of this government program to experiment and find a cure or understand how syphilis works. So you were not allowed to join the Army. And why were you not allowed to join the Army? Because if you joined the Army, you would get proper health care. You would actually get cured for syphilis. You would actually be truly cured, and someone would help try to figure out what the heck is going on with you, and you'll get proper health care. So you were not allowed to be drafted in the Army, people. Come on, how serious is this? How serious is this? You know how hard it is to not get drafted into the Army. You've seen what happened to Muhammad Ali. They took away that man's boxing license. I'm sorry, I'm off subject. Point is, Eunice Rivers was big. Going to church leaders, going to community leaders, convincing them and helping them keep these participants at bay. Making sure to keep these participants in the program. Now, like many of you, many of us, we all grow suspicious of this program. We all grew suspicious of this program, and some of these participants wanted out. They didn't feel the benefit of going through this painful spinal tap. They didn't feel the benefits of taking these vitamins and minerals and aspirin when it wasn't helping cure anything. So they wanted out. So what does Eunice Rivers and all the doctors and participants of the federal government of this program do? What do? They come together and say, you know what? How about this? We'll make a deal with you. We'll give you $50 covering all your funeral costs. All your funeral costs in the case you die. And you're probably saying, so you're telling me somebody's going to give me money to cover my funeral costs. And you're probably saying, I wouldn't take that, but think about this just for 1 second. Let's put this in proper context so you understand, people. Remember, I said education is very important. At this time, you got to think about what burial was like for these people. A burial for these people were mostly thrown in a pine box in an unmarked grave. They didn't have the money to give their loved ones a proper burial. So giving them $50 meant you would get a proper burial. You would get a real casket. You would actually get a marked grave. That meant something to them. That meant something to these people. So getting that $50 was enough to keep them in this program. This went on for years and years and decades. Throughout the civil rights movement, multiple opportunities were created and given to end this program, to truly get these people cured. Most specifically, when penicillin was found. Penicillin is an antibiotic that was able to truly cure syphilis. So you're probably wondering, well, when penicillin was finally created and they finally found penicillin and understood that it could cure syphilis, they started giving it to participants, right? That's probably what you're wondering. They're probably like, yeah, they started curing these people now, right? Because now we have a cure for it. We have a cure for this bad blood disease. We have a cure for syphilis. So I'm pretty sure that they gave these participants penicillin, correct? Wrong, people. Though penicillin was available, readily available, and was found to be successful at curing syphilis, it wasn't given to any of the participants. You may be wondering why. What was the excuse? Well, doctors would later report was, well, these patients were so far along that the penicillin would not have an effect on them. It would not have an effect on fighting syphilis in them. This is not scientifically proven because there was never none given to these patients to find out if it would or wouldn't have an effect on the long-term effects of syphilis. So they never knew, and we will never know. The point is, none of these participants was given penicillin to help fight the syphilis disease. The experiment went on way into the 1980s. To be more precise, I believe it was 1985. Tell a gentleman named Peter Buxton. Peter Buxton stumbled on what was going on in the Tuskegee Institution. What was going on with the Tuskegee Experiment, where they was trying to find out how the bad blood disease, also known as syphilis, was affecting the black community. Peter Buxton made a big deal about this, brought it to the doctors, told them this is unconstitutional, this is not right. You're impeding on these people's rights. You're stomping all over these people's constitutional rights to get free health care, to understand and know and have knowledge on what's being done to them. Because as far as they understand, as far as they know, they're not getting experimented on. As far as they know, they're being treated for syphilis, for bad blood disease. That's what they think. That's what they know. That's what the churches told them, the community leaders. That's what all these doctors and nurses told them. That's what they think, but it's not true. Peter Buxton made a big deal about this. Peter Buxton would have been told, you're not a doctor. You don't understand how this works. You're not educated on syphilis. Get the hell out of my office. Bury his story. But Peter Buxton didn't do that. See, Peter Buxton, unlike the doctors, unlike Eunice Rivers and all these other people, the federal government, he had a conscience. He knew this was wrong. He understood the importance of educating the community and the participants of this program. Shining a light on this program, Peter Buxton exposed this program to the point that the Tuskegee Experiment had to eventually be shut down. Now, if you look up the Tuskegee Experiment right now, people Google it. First thing that's going to come up is a CDC CDC.gov is going to come up with a story telling you how this whole experiment went on, what happened, what was the point of this experiment. A watered down version of it. But to see the truth about it, you got to do what I did, and that's dig. You got to dig for interviews of participants of the program. You got to dig of documentaries of what truly happened. You have to dig to get the truth, people. And why do you have to dig to get the truth? Because the most unfortunate part of this whole story is, not the most, but one of the most unfortunate parts of this story is that most of the information and documentation of this program was mishandled, misused, damaged, lost. So for all of these sharecroppers, 600 plus sharecroppers, all the pain, the suffering, the sickness, the illness, the death that these family members had to experience, a lot of documentation has been lost, contaminated, and don't serve no purpose in the fight against syphilis. Before you judge people on their promiscuous sexual lives, just remember, we all had a moment where we all were a little promiscuous. Me, you, all of us did. We all had that moment where we were a little irresponsible. So it's not about judging somebody on their choices. It's about understanding the importance of having an education. See, a lot of you right now, I know I spent most of the episode talking about Tuskegee, and that's fine because I need you to know about it. A lot of you right now, we're dealing with COVID-19. We're dealing with the pandemic. And let's be honest, people. Most of us, if not all of us, are scared. We're just as scared as these sharecroppers who are in Alabama, Megansville, Alabama. We're just as scared because we don't have as much information. We got the federal government, Dr. Fauci, giving us information, telling us 1 minute that you can track this virus by touching things on the surface. Next minute, there's droplets in the air. There's so much misleading information about the COVID-19, similar to syphilis, to bad blood disease. There's so much misinformation out there. And we're all nervous. We're all scared. We're scared for our children. We're scared for the return of schools. We're scared to return to work. We're scared to do certain things like daily things like go to the supermarket, go to grocery store, go to the restaurants, go to the movie theater, just do general things, visit family members, have birthday parties. We're nervous. We're fearful. We're looking at everybody like they're a suspect. If you have a mask on, we're looking at you like you're the one that have the disease. We have fights out here about the importance of wearing a mask, and some people feel entitled that they shouldn't have to wear a mask. They shouldn't have to wear gloves. They shouldn't have to wear protective gear because they feel like, I don't have the disease, so why do I need to have it? Why do I need to protect myself? Well, the point is not only protecting yourself, but protecting others. And most importantly, the most vulnerable of the community. Well, here's the point where I'm trying to get at with this, people. The point of educating ourselves and understanding that a lot of times where we look at people and they're scarce and they're doubtful, and they're not so willing to take vaccines. When they're not willing to take certain medications, it's because it's not just conspiracy theories. But sometimes conspiracy theories proven there's something deeper behind it. You understand there's something that pushes, that influences that fear. There's a saying, where there's smoke, there's normally fire. So for those people who are critical about vaccines, critical about taking the COVID-19 vaccine, you have to understand those feelings come from somewhere, because we have to dig into our history. We got to dig into the Tuskegee Experiment and what happened with the bad blood disease, aka syphilis. And we think about what happened to them, where misleading information, where false information, documented information was given to us by community leaders, by church leaders, taught to us to do and take advantage of a program that they knew wasn't good for us. Now, I'm not sitting here trying to dismantle or talk down the churches, because let me just say this real quick, people. It's not to say all churches, all community leaders, black leaders, are all trying to take advantage or to destroy the black community or destroy any community. The fact of the matter is, no matter where you are, what you're doing, there will be good and bad people. There'll be good and bad churches. There'll be good and bad people. There will always be people, as long as greed, envy is on this earth. There will be people who are trying to line their pockets, even at the disadvantage and dismay and destruction of you. But the important thing is, people, is to earn an education. The importance is to educate yourself on what's going on, what's available to you. Though there's misleading information about COVID-19, don't sit here and just listen to what the news is telling you about it. Don't listen to what the president is telling you about it. Do your own research. Do your own homework. Take it serious that you're protecting yourself. Take it serious that you're educating yourself. See, people think ignorance is bliss, but ignorance is truly not bliss, and this is proven. The Tuskegee Experiment is the greatest proof that ignorance is not bliss. These members were ignorant to it. Some because they just weren't informed and didn't know how to read the contracts and understand what they were signing. But ignorance is bliss to some people because you just don't want to know. All I want to know is I'm getting free health services, getting free testing. Someone actually cares enough about me that they're going to put a clinic in my neighborhood to help fight this disease, not knowing what they're really trying to do is trying to understand they're using me to experiment on, to get a better understanding, all in the name of science, to find a cure for who they want to cure, not for me, but who they choose to cure. They have no invested interest in keeping me safe. But see, here's where education is important. Here's where I start the story, and I talk about my children. Yo, make sure that you can read that contract before you buy a house. Make sure you can understand how to count your money before you go buy a Ferrari. If you're trying to join the NBA, son, you need to make sure you can understand that contract. It's much more than about dribbling the ball, putting the ball in the hoop. It's much more about sitting there poolside in your new mansion or flying down the road doing 200 in your Lamborghini. You need to understand and educate yourself on how to read contracts. You have to know what you're getting yourself into, people. We're so quick to sign things. We're so quick to agree to something, but we don't take the time to understand what we read or we agreeing to. But then we'll sit here and we'll talk about on social media, we keep it 100. I keep it 100. You need to keep it 100 with yourself because you ain't keeping it 100 if you're only keeping it 20% with you. Because that's what you're doing. You're keeping it 20% with you, but keeping it 100 with your followers on social media. I keep it 100. I tell the truth. I speak the truth. Well, speak the truth then, people. Speak the truth. And then seek the truth so you have education and understand what the truth is. What is the truth? Get yourself educated. Pick up a book. Read. I'm not just telling you read about the Tuskegee Experiment. I'm not just telling you read about Black history. Read about history. I'm not telling you just read about history. Read a book about other things. Life. You got goals, you got dreams. Read about that. Learn how to solve a math problem. Read a dictionary. Understand what words mean. So when people try to use big words that you don't understand, you know what they mean. When people try to throw lingo that you don't understand contracts, because lawyers can be very tricky of using lingo that we don't understand, language that we don't understand. We can do our education to make sure we're prepared before we get there. Before you try to take advantage of us or take something from us, most importantly, the thing that we should hold most dearest, one of the things, besides our time, that we should hold most dearest is our health. Before we allow you to take that from us, we need to educate ourselves. We need to understand that no civilization can be destroyed, dismantled, or overturned until you destroy yourself from within. So we need to hold the people who are trying to destroy ourselves, destroy these communities from the inside accountable for their actions, the Eunice Rivers of the world. Because we often talk about doctors being KKK, the cops being KKK, but what about the other Black people who are in your community, in your churches, your community leaders, who are also members of an organization that's set up to dismantle and destroy you, to mislead you? I ain't here to tell you to revolt a revolution. I'm here to tell you to revolt and create a revolution for education, for learning. If you want to properly pay your ancestors respect, pay them respect by doing something, taking advantage of something that was not truly given to them. The right to have an education, the right to know how to read, write, count, learn. Take advantage of it, people. Take advantage of the opportunity to have an education. Show your ancestors the greatest form of respect that you can ever show them by getting an education, by learning. Ignorance is not bliss. And as we experience and we deal with COVID-19, where they're coming up with vaccines, you worry about them chipping you. You worry about them coming to a moneyless nation or new world order. Here's my question to you. What do you want to do to stop it if you don't truly know what's going on or how to truly combat it? Time is now, people. Despite what you heard, what you've been told, education is free. And it's there for you to take advantage of it. Don't kid me when I don't have a computer, because almost all of us have a smartphone or some type of smart device in our home. Google don't cause you to sign up. They're not asking you for your credit card number. They're not asking you for a deposit. Google. Google, people. Google education. Then get yourself a heavy dose of it. Because education is the greatest medicine and the greatest cure for ignorance. I want to thank you for joining me for another episode of the Past and Present Podcast. Remember, like, subscribe, comment to my show. Also, if you want to hit me up, Facebook, Past Present, Instagram, Alan the Great. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear about what's your thoughts on the show. What's your thoughts on education? What are some of the conversations you have with your children? And until next time I see you people, I only got one thing left to say, y'all. Stay tuned.